So Daniel Andrews will get his pandemic bill through the Parliament. It'll be voted on as early as tomorrow, after a crossbencher who was a hard no became a yes after getting 6 conditional changes to the bill. To help us understand those is Matthew Barkus, the Shadow Attorney-General in Victoria. Matthew, good evening. Now,
hi, Paul. Thanks for having me on.
I read a summation of this in the Herald Sun, which seemed to suggest things like in 18 months after a declaration of a pandemic, there would be some capacity to overrule the bad decision, right? That's hardly a massive change to the positive. Also, other ones suggest that the definition of a pandemic should be slightly clearer. It feels like they've gone into a negotiation. They've made it look like a negotiation, but bugger all has actually changed, and we'll have to wait a few months to see what magical piece of legislation will pass in order to get their number.
Look, the changes are Mickey Mouse at best. The biggest issues that I always had regarding this bill remain. So little parliamentary oversight, so few powers of review. 60 eminent barristers, QCs, came out a few weeks ago to slam this legislation and make the correct point, that under this legislation, the Premier has unlimited power, and yet there are no serious powers of review, certainly not by a judge or a magistrate. And you're right, one additional independent MP has rolled over, which only underscores the point, Paul, that here in Victoria, if you want no more lockdowns, you've got to vote for the Liberals or the Nationals. If you vote for the independents, well, I'm afraid that's tantamount to a vote for the Andrews Labor government. We all know why they're trying to ram through these pandemic lockdown laws, and that's because their only reaction to COVID, even once we've hit 90%, soon 95% double vaccinated, is more lockdowns. With Omicron now, they're ramping up the fear once again.
Yeah, well, here's Rod Barton, who was elected essentially off a whole bunch of people that were angry about how the taxi industry was treated. I remember talking to him in the lead up to that last election when we had a minor party candidate for him. He explains why he went from no to yes.
This is a far better bill than what we had, and we have curbed the powers of this government. My relationship with the government and myself is frosty at the best of times. I've been battling them all the time. And I did what had to be done, which was right.
But again, what I find weird about this, again, Matthew, now look, you've read the legislation, you understand the I's and T's in this. I don't understand how it is not clear that the definition of a pandemic is one that's ruled by the World Health Organization and decided by X number of health officials in Australia. That is not in this bill.
No, it's not. So I've got my telly on in the corner of my office here. I'm in a Parliament right now, Paul, and if the bells ring during our interview, I will have to run off. So apologies. We're currently debating Clause 4 of the bill. We've been debating the bill for 7 hours in committee. We're only on Clause 4. There are 58 clauses in the bill. And Clause 4 is the definitions clause. Yeah. And in that clause, it talks about how the government can lock us down if, in its view, there is a disease, an infectious condition of pandemic proportions anywhere in the world. And that's what our leader in the upper house, David Davis, is seeking to prosecute right now as I talk to you. So that's outrageous, that there could be a condition anywhere in the world, and because of an apparent fear of that, the Premier and the Health Minister can lock us down for months with effectively still no parliamentary oversight. So I agree, Rod Barton, others can try to wrap this up however they like. These amendments, as the Bar Association here in Victoria said just today so powerfully, have gone so little way to addressing the deep concerns of the Victorian community. So ultimately later tonight, probably at 2 or 3 in the morning, the Liberals and the Nationals will be voting against this legislation. Look, I agree with you. It looks like we're going to lose. And in that case, we'll be taking this matter to the people at next year's state election, and we're going to be crystal clear that if the Victorian people vote for the Liberals and the Nationals, our very first act in government will be to rip up this legislation.
Yeah, absolutely. Because look, should there be a framework of legislation to help you deal with situations like we've been through in the past couple of years? Of course. Should it be as vague and as broad as this? No freaking way. And you can tell me this is exactly the same situation in New South Wales. That only tells me that the New South Wales law is bad. You can tell me it's the same as Queensland. That means the Queensland law is bad. Anyway, appreciate the chat, Matthew. All the best for what's going to be a very long and, sadly, it looks like disappointing night, but who knows? Thank you very much, mate.
Look, I think so. Thank you, Paul.